The notion of impossibility is the strangest thing. To limit ourselves in thinking that anything is unattainable is so bizarre. Because if you consider where we're at now, even just the simple fact that you're able to watch this video, we've been able to transcend time and space so that you and I can communicate with one another, despite the fact that you're not physically here with me when I'm recording this at 3 in the morning on Wednesday, August 3rd. And yet, I'm able to share this idea with you. And there's a real possibility that this idea and this video is being shared with multiple people simultaneously. Even though at the time you're watching this video, I, Michael, am not in the act of sharing the idea that you're listening to. And thus calls into question identity and what we can do as human beings. Because through this recording of the video, I have created the potential for an infinite number of Michael Sanders to share this idea with an unlimited number of people. And Michael Sanders could share this idea even beyond my death. So, by simply recording a video, I can immortalize my consciousness, or at least my consciousness in a given time and space. And to do this, if we reflect upon it historically, is only something attainable within, I'm not entirely sure, but I think perhaps the last century or two with the advent of video. But to be able to do so conveniently that I can just, while having trouble sleeping, interestingly not due to any unresolved, but just due to a feeling of wholeness and inspiration, that I can pick up this device, this laptop, open it up, click a button, and record an idea to immortalize myself and to essentially separate myself into an infinite number of me. It's quite fractal when you think about it, because there's one Michael Sanders who then created an infinite number of videos. And just to clarify that, in case the point is unclear, I recognize that there is one video, or there's one message, or one story, or one piece of content. However, the receiving of this video is infinite. There could be billions of people watching this video simultaneously. And so, whenever we think that anything's possible, it's only by that labeling that we actually limit the possibility of something manifesting. Everything we do today, or not everything, but so many of the things we do today, would have been deemed impossible mere centuries ago, decades ago, and some of the things we do even mere years ago. Like, I was having a FaceTime call with my girlfriend earlier, and despite the fact that she's in Los Angeles and I'm in Toronto, separated by vast geographical distance, we were hanging out and sharing a conversation and sharing an experience as though we were together. Now, obviously, that experience is limited in the sense that we cannot physically touch one another. However, the realization of being able to touch one another may be attainable fairly soon with the advent of things like virtual reality and the different apparatuses that are going alongside it. So we may see tactile experience integrated into, let's say, a Skype or a FaceTime call. And the inspiration for this video is a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, which I just finished watching. And the film focuses on the notion of time travel and the protagonist being a time traveler and seeking a partner to go time travel with him back to the year 2001. And initially, the other characters in the film, at the very least, are quite skeptical of him, and most are dismissive of his legitimacy, thinking that he's a lunatic. But it's this perceived lunacy this unwillingness to accept the status quo or reality just as it is, the unwillingness to accept that our fate and our realities cannot be changed. It's this belief in the fact that we can shape our lives and our reality, and we can make things better, through which all innovation and invention stems. It's often the crazy ones, or the perceived crazy ones, who create such brilliance. Because even if they have their doubts along the way, they don't let their doubts consume them. And they maintain a vision so strongly that even though they might be the only one who sees the vision initially, over time and through unrelenting pursuit of that vision, others can't help but see the same thing. And perhaps at the outset, a few others will see that vision. And over time, more people will see that vision. And eventually, perhaps everyone can see that vision. So even consider something like the internet. The conceptualizer of the concept was quite likely ridiculed, or at the very least just not taken very seriously for his or her invention or his or her concept. And yet, clearly that vision was held strongly enough, and perhaps it wasn't by any one individual, but by perhaps a small collective. And they held that vision strongly enough. And even in the year, 2000, I remember being in elementary school, and some friends had internet and others didn't. There was dial-up connection, and a lot of people just, didn't really see the value in it, didn't think this was going anywhere, thought it was a fad, didn't understand it, weren't interested in it. And yet, those who did believed in it so strongly that they just continued on this mission to make the internet more accessible, more useful, more valuable. And it has since evolved into something so ubiquitous in our culture that I think it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for any one of us watching this video to really imagine a world without the internet. We've become so reliant upon it, and rightfully so, because it is this tool for previously incomprehensible connectivity, previously inaccessible means of understanding and of communication and of sharing. We now can share virtually anything, or at least anything informational, anything in terms of content, instantaneously, or very close to instantaneously, whether it's film, or audio, or text, whether it's works of art like painting, or musical albums, or novels. We can distribute these things so effortlessly. And similar to this video itself that you're viewing, we can create infinite copies of the same works of art for virtually zero cost. And this thing called the internet is probably a pretty stupid idea like 40 or 50 years ago. And yet now it's so significant. So in watching the film about time travel, surely there are many who dismiss the notion of its possibility, and many others who would cite all the complications that come with the theory of time travel, in that if we ever could time travel, couldn't we always have time traveled? Because you have all these notions and complications when it comes to the space-time continuum, and jumping backwards in time, then rippling forward throughout the future, so that wouldn't everyone now know that we could time travel? And I mean, I don't have the answer to that, but I certainly wouldn't dismiss the possibility of time travel from being a real thing. And perhaps it already does exist. Something I've talked about before is the notion of time not necessarily being linear. And I recognize that from the traditional human perspective it is. We have a past, present, and future. But when we consider the larger macrocosmic space and time, and we entertain the idea that perhaps our human perspective on time is a limited perspective on time, because we are so tiny as human beings in this vast notion we call the cosmos. And inevitably and surely there's so much that we don't know, and that we're not even scratching the surface of. It's infinite, and it's fractal. And by fractal, I like to use an analogy of it. It's like Russian dolls unto infinity. You know those little dolls that stack inside of each other? It's like an infinite number of those in every direction, larger and smaller. And our body, as an example, is a universe for trillions of species. All the bacteria, all the cells that exist inside of us. Well, we might dismiss their life cycles of 7 days or 30 days or however long they are as being insignificant or unintelligent or unimportant or purely utilitarian. Then so too might our existences be to something of a grander scale. We're the red blood cells inside something bigger, and to that something bigger, maybe we're purely utilitarian, unintelligent, or insignificant. And it perceives our lifetime as so minuscule, the same way we perceive a red blood cell's lifetime as minuscule. And yet, from that red blood cell's perspective, it's very likely experiencing an entire lifetime. Well, it is experiencing an entire lifetime, but what I mean is that it's very likely experiencing an entire lifetime of ups and downs, of trials and tribulations, of light and dark. And started this talk to consider the idea of impossibility, and just really think that nothing at all is impossible. And I really don't see how it could be. I love you guys.